Hey everybody, welcome to Bible class. Can you find with me Judges chapter 11? I'm going over the next few minutes just to give you a brief overview of Judges 11 through 16, two key names that I would love for you to remember, Jephthah and Samson. They are judges in Israel, but we have been noticing throughout our survey of this book some key words. Stubbornness, right? That's how the people of God would get themselves into trouble, and God would use a foreign nation to punish them. Eventually, the children of Israel would cry out to God for deliverance, and God would raise up a judge who would save them from these foreign armies. But given enough time, the people would go back to stubbornness. We've been noticing that cycle over and over again. God using the Mesopotamians to discipline Israel, the Moabites, the Philistines, the Canaanites, the Midianites, and Amalekites. God would bring people from north, south, east, west, and yet Israel is continuing to struggle. Today in our class, we're looking at these Ammonites who were coming from the east and making life for the Israelites tough. Here's where we're introduced to a man named Jephthah in Judges chapter 11. He was one of several brothers, but his brothers hated him, had driven him out because he was the son of another woman. But when these Ammonites came along, his people, Jephthah's people, decided, we would like you to be our leader because, Jephthah, you are a mighty warrior. And in Judges 11, verse 29, we're given a sense as to why. We've heard this before, right? The Spirit of the Lord was upon Jephthah, and he is able to rally soldiers for Israel and win a great victory. But here's probably what he's best known for: a vow, a tragic vow. In Judges chapter 11 and verse 30, Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will give the Ammonites into my hand, then whatever comes out from the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. In verse 32, Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord gave them into his hand. Verse 33, the Ammonites were subdued before the people of Israel. This is that Judges cycle, right? And Jephthah comes home, and what comes out of his house? What comes through that door? His own daughter, his only child. Besides her, he had neither son nor daughter. Now, as a class, you might dig a little bit more into that, into the life, even the vow of Jephthah, but you know where this cycle is going to go, right? The people have been saved, and given enough time, they get to be stubborn again. That's where we are in Judges chapter 13, verse 1. The people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord gave them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. This is where we're introduced to that man named Samson. He is actually a child of miraculous birth given to a barren couple. Judges chapter 13 and verse 2 tells us about the father of Samson. His name was Manoah, Manoah's wife was barren. She had no children. And an angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Let's listen to what God wanted this son to be. In verse 4, therefore be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Eventually, of course, verse 24, this woman bears a son and calls his name Samson. But part of being a Nazarite was, I want you to remember this, no razor was to touch his head. The young man grew. The Lord blessed him. The Spirit, here it is again, the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him. And Samson is a man of incredible God-given strength, as long as he lives like a Nazarite. In chapter 14, verses 5 and 6, he's able to kill a young lion with his bare hands. In verse 19, we read about him striking down, all on his own, 30 Philistines. In chapter 15, verses 4 and 5, he's able to catch 300 foxes, set torches on fire between their tails, and set them loose to burn the grain fields of the Philistines. Later in chapter 15, he strikes 1,000 with the jawbone of a donkey. In chapter 16, he carries the gate of a city 40 miles away. This is a man of incredible God-given strength. You might talk a little bit more about those examples as a class. For now, what we need to understand is Samson had a great weakness. Sometimes, on more than one occasion, he wanted women more than he wanted God. And his greatest temptations came from a Philistine woman named Delilah. Samson loved Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines who are attacking Israel, they find this out. And so they come to Delilah and they say in Judges 16 verse 5, seduce him, see where his great strength lies. Well, we know where his great strength lies. It comes from the Lord. And the Lord had said even before Samson was born, I want him to live as a Nazarite. Among other things, a razor is never to touch his head. The Philistines say, we need you to find this out, a way that we can overpower him so that we can bind him to humble him. And we'll give you 1,100 pieces of silver, Delilah, if you can find that out. If your Bible is open there to Judges 16, I want you to listen to how this goes. Verse 6, Delilah says to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies and how you might be bound that one could subdue you. And Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. Was that true? Have we read anything about that? No, that wasn't true. Now, Delilah tried it, and Samson was able to break those bowstrings, but she kept tempting him, and Samson kept listening. In verse 10, she said to Samson, "Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Please tell me how you might be bound." And Samson said to her, "If they bind me with new ropes that have not been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man." Was that true? Have we read anything about that? No, we haven't. And Delilah ties Samson up with new ropes that have never been used, and he still has his strength. He's able to break those. But Delilah keeps pushing, and Samson keeps playing this dangerous game. In verse 13, "Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you might be bound." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web and fasten it tight with the pin, then I shall become weak and be like any other man." Have we read anything about weaving his hair? No, we haven't, but we have heard about his hair, right? Samson is getting dangerously close. In verse 15, after that fails, Delilah says, "How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You've mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies." And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. And he tells her the truth about this Nazirite vow, that a razor has never touched his head. "If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man." Delilah tricks him. Delilah turns him over to the Philistines. Samson's strength leaves him, and he is terribly tortured by the Philistines. His revenge on them eventually costs him his life. He had judged Israel for 20 years. Jephthah and Samson. Some tragic stories there that we need to dig in a little bit more together as a class. Thanks for being in class. Appreciate you being here and studying along with me. Hope you have a great rest of this week.